And a very good morning, Vaqueros. Good morning to all of you listeners, and welcome to All In with Ali, live from our Edinburgh studio. It's a very nice day out here. Very nice day to talk about some sports, and we got a special guest on this week. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Angel Garcia. I am a sports intern here at the University of UTRGV, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
Well, thanks for being here, and not just an intern, but also a fan, right? We see you got the Saints hoodie on today.
Yeah, diehard. Been here since 08, 09. Got to see them win in '09 versus the Colts. So
Mm.
I live and breathe black and gold.
All right. And while we're on the Saints, let's segue into our recap of next week of last week's NFL games. We'll start with the Chiefs' undefeated streak's finally over. Bills overcome. Josh Allen. Well, I'd have to start getting him into those MVP considerations, don't you think?
100%. He's been balling out, man. I mean, that Bills offense, people were concerned once Stephon Diggs left, and people deemed him the reason why they were so effective, but maybe he was that locker room cancer. And they're doing things with Amari Cooper, Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Carolina Panther legend.
Absolutely. And there were questions about the wide receiver room after Stephon Diggs left, but they went out and traded for Amari Cooper, and he's been a godsend for that Bills offense. And Josh Allen just doing what he does, and that big run that helped sort of seal the deal. That was impressive.
Yeah, it's very huge for Buffalo. I mean, they're gonna compete for sure for a title. I mean, KC, yeah, they're 9-1 now, but who knows? They can still compete to go back to back to back, or maybe we'll have a new winner this year.
Yeah, hopefully we have a new winner this year. But I think this year's Chiefs, they sort of remind me of the Philadelphia Eagles from last year. They went on, what was it, 11-1 to start the year, and then they just started losing game after game after game that they should have won because there were questions. There's certainly a lot of questions about this Chiefs team, despite the fact that they're 9-1. They've dealt with a whole host of injuries and lack of depth and those kind of issues. So who knows? Well, there's still a lot of football to play this year, and what was that?
I was just gonna say, yeah, Kansas City was finding ways to win. A bunch of miracles. I mean, Denver almost beat them with a walk-off field goal by former Saints legend Will Lutz, but they were able to block that off. And it's gonna be a sight to see in the second half of the season how KC answers back. Getting the first loss of the season.
Yeah. After after taking that first loss, your only question is either are is the team that's 9-1 legit, or are they going to fall off the board? And that's what they're going to have to answer for next week. Chargers and Bengals. That was a great game to watch last week. It seemed like the Chargers were just taking off at the end of the game. It seemed like they were going to run away with it a little, but then the Bengals just started clawing right back, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase doing what they always do, and Chase Brown being a revelation in the run pass game as well.
Yeah, Chase Brown has been a great addition. Second year pro out of Syracuse.
Hmm.
He's just been an animal. Replacing Joe Mixon, who's been balling out for Houston. And yeah, like you mentioned, or to start it off, it was a sight to see. Didn't want to. The Chargers are known for being choke artists recently. Against the Jaguars a couple years back in the wild card.
Yeah, they were up like 27 points in that at the half in that game, and then they ended up just falling off a cliff towards the end and losing out.
Yeah, the Chargers were up by I want to say 18 points, and then Bengals are just chipping away at that rock, and it was a really great game to end that night.
Yeah, and just unfortunate for Joe Burrow to be on the losing end of that because he's been playing like some of the best football of his career this season, and not to walk away from that kind of a game with the loss just has to be tough. I mean, serious questions about the Bengals defense and the Bengals O line.
It's truly unfortunate how Burrow's been in MVP conversation and their record is not replicating that, and it's a shame. They need some O line help. It's He tore his ACL his rookie year. I mean, after not having an O line, feel like they've added a couple pieces, but it's just not enough. They need to find a way to protect their franchise quarterback, and Bengals are just cursed if you want to put it that way. Unfortunately.
Yeah, you remember the playoff game against the Steelers a couple years ago? It seemed like they had that game won, and then a couple of bad penalties in that game ultimately put the Steelers in field goal range for them to walk it off.
Yeah, it's gonna be Zach Taylor's a good coach. I feel like they have some good mentors, some good leadership, but they just got to find a way to seal their games and no, not lose to teams under 500.
Yeah, it's either get right and claw back now, or wait until next year because the trade deadline's already gone and passed. You can't get any more help. What you got on your roster is what you got.
Yeah, and I think T. Higgins is a free agent after this season, so they're gonna have to find ways to either pay him, extend him, or find a free agent.
All right, Lions and Jags. I mean, nothing more else we can say about this game other than it was an absolute smackdown. I mean, a 50-point win for the Lions. They looked about as good as they have all year. They've been doing that to a lot of different teams this year, not just the Jags. It's been the Cowboys this year on the receiving end of that as well. The Seahawks at one point. They beat teams. They beat them down, and I feel like it's a consequence of the playoff game that they had last year. It took their foot off the gas just a little bit, and they got burned in the NFC Championship. So Dan Campbell's just doesn't let his foot off the gas anymore this year.
Yeah, Dan Campbell is such a great coach. I mean, that guy's resume speaks for itself. He's a tight end for Detroit, New Orleans, Dallas. Just you would want to run through a brick wall for that man.
Absolutely.
And like you mentioned, Detroit's been balling, and they've been looking good too with their new uniforms. Very drippy, very. You look good, you play good, and they're the favorites in my opinion in the NFC to make a run, and as they should. They deserve. It's been too long since they've ever been relevant, especially in the playoffs. It'd be nice to see them, maybe knock down KC or Buffalo in the Super Bowl if they make it that far.
I think they will, and I think Dan Campbell. It's more of a consequence of like why he wants to see the Lions succeed is because he was on that 0-16 Lions team way back when, and so it really does mean a lot personally to Dan Campbell, and it's just so. It's great seeing a coach that you can run through a brick wall for, that's so passionate about the game, that loves his players and wants to see them succeed. And the Lions, to me, they look like the most complete. The Lions are the most complete team in football. I mean, their offense has been incredible. Their defense, even without Aiden Hutchinson, still been pretty good.
Yeah, and they've made additions to fill in for Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive end. And offensively too, they got Gibbs and Montgomery. What is their nickname?
Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, you got to have those good vibes in there, or aura, as people have been saying.
Yeah.
Got a great receiving core. They got at tight end Laporta. You got St.
Amon-Ra.
Brown. You got JMO, you can catch a ball for 60 yards and take it to the crib. It's that efficiency that they have on both sides of the ball. Even their linebackers. You got what's his name? I think it's like Malcolm Rodriguez. He's been inconsistent as of late, but that guy was a late round pick, and he's always making plays for them. I feel like Detroit can turn some heads and make a run.
And their line's been good too. And Penei Sewell, incredible,
great athlete.
All right, and next game I want to talk about last week's set was the Texans and the Cowboys, the battle of the two teams in Texas, and then ultimately the Houston Texans came out on top in that one. And it wasn't even close. I mean, not just a great effort. Joe Mixon had 3 touchdowns. He was unstoppable. They just couldn't keep a hold on him. It seemed like the entire game.
He's a workhorse. He's their bell cow. I mean, that guy can give you on average, 150 plus scrimmage yards on both sides of, rushing and receiving. And the receiving court too. You got a bunch of rotational guys you can plug in, and then unfortunately, Stephon Diggs with that ACL tear, but you got Nico Collins who just came back from injury. You got Tank Dell, who's like another Jameson Williams from Detroit, who maybe play the slot, but that guy
he can just take off, and
his playmaking skills is remarkable.
And with number 1 corners on Nico Collins, it opens up. That's why it's one of the reasons really why the Texans offense has sort of struggled coming into this was not having Nico Collins, and it's such a huge presence to have a wide receiver who's that good, who's not only fast but physical and can get great separation like Nico Collins can. It sort of takes the attention off of a guy like Tank Dell and allows him to break away for that big yardage.
And Houston has a good I don't think people really take notice of this, but they got a good core of young and vets. They got guys like Dalton Schultz at the tight end position, who just came from Dallas a couple years ago. And then they have Robert Woods that's a good mentor for these young mixture of receivers they have there. And then their defense available with Stingley and Petrie.
Petrie. I mean, the defense was honestly after outside Joe Mixon, the defense was a huge standout in this game. Limited, even though Cooper Rush didn't have a bad day under center, limited the Cowboys to 10 points the entire game, and not just that, picking up the double fumble on the same play, just not giving up on a play. Jalen Petrie had a couple of hard hits. Stingley with the interception. Barnett returning the touchdown. And they're returning the fumble to the house for a touchdown.
Yeah, that defense is being led by a defensive great player by D'Amico Ryans, who was on those late 2010 Texan teams with Matt Schaub and
Brian Cushing.
J.J.
Watt.
Brooks Reed.
Arian Foster. I mean, these great Texans teams from way back when.
It's time for Houston to, contend for a title.
I think so too. I mean, it might be a little early. It's still Texans are still 7-4. There's still a lot of football left to be played, but I think this was as good of a get right day as you can get if you're the Houston Texans. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys, on the other hand, what can you say other than the season is definitely over?
It's just a shame. It's sad for them. It's not their fault ultimately. You got an owner who is living in his heydays and thinks that he can. It's under his way. He wants it his way or the highway. And unfortunately, that's the reason why Dallas comes up short sometimes. They're great in the regular season, and unfortunately, they don't replicate that in the postseason. And it's like Parson said on his podcast, I think it was yesterday. He's like, we're a good team, and I was even talking to you about that. I was like, on paper, but they just got to find ways to stay healthy.
Yeah.
They need to, prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first time they've been, under 500 in a couple of years. So I mean,
not since 2020. I think they were under 500 that year, but that was also a year where Dak Prescott got injured, and we saw again this year Dak's going to be out the remainder of the year. The offense outside of CeeDee Lamb, it's very thin. The running back room is almost non-existent. I mean, Rico Dowdle is not a bad player, but signing an aging Zeke Elliott, not even attempting to reach out to Derrick Henry when he was available in the offseason was a very interesting choice, let's say, the Cowboys made. All right, speaking of the Dallas Cowboys and get-right games, the Commanders, after dropping a game to the Eagles this week, look to get right, and they play the Dallas Cowboys in Week 12.
I am predicting Washington wins that by double digits. That offense, that whole team, especially since the acquisition of Marshawn Lattimore, they're
Saints legend.
Yeah, Saints legend. They're close to a complete team as, Detroit. They just need to find ways to finish,
Yeah.
Especially, they had that walk-off win versus Chicago that kind of propelled their, mojo, that confidence build. That team is very complete too, Their receiver core is, not the best, but they make it work.
Scary Terry's really good, though.
No, 100%. Scary Terry is one of the most underrated receivers, probably top 10, top 12. The Zach Ertz, Robinson, you have at the running back position, Eckler. Their O-line needs to do, keep up with, Jaden Daniels, who's honestly in contention to probably win Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm. All right, speaking of former Chargers, and let's take a look at Austin Eckler's old team in the Chargers. They play the Ravens on Monday night, and it's going to be the Harbaugh Bowl, and the Chargers have been looking like a much improved team under Harbaugh's tutelage.
I agree, and hot take here, I think the Chargers upset, and they beat Baltimore. I think they can just chip away, convert on those third downs, find a way to get a mixture of feed McConkey and J.K. Dobbins and maybe Gus Edwards, both Dobbins and Gus Edwards, former Baltimore Ravens. Comeback player of the year might go to Dobbins, all those years of being injury riddled, unfortunately, and
now
having a career year.
Yeah, having a complete season behind a good line, behind Joe Alt, who I think was an incredible pick.
Great pick.
I mean, there was great offensive talent in this year's draft, but you can't pass up having as clean of a pocket as Joe Alt's been giving Justin Herbert all year.
You got to protect Justin as much as you can. I mean, he balled out. You saw against Cincinnati all those
Mhm.
dots, keeping the drive going. Something that I think he can replicate versus Baltimore this coming week.
All right. We'll take it to the next segment after a brief break. We'll talk about the Heisman race, about the playoff seeding in the college football landscape. Don't touch that dial. We'll be back after this break. And welcome back to All In with Ali. Still have here Daniel Garcia, our special guest here on this week's episode. Let's talk some college football here. Let's talk about the recent rankings. I mean, final rankings and what determines the college football playoff that comes out December 8th. But my understanding is why SMU was ranked 13th, but Notre Dame was ranked. What are they ranked now? 6, you said? Or
Yeah, they're ranked six. They're 9-1, and they're ranked six, right behind undefeated Indiana.
undefeated Indiana. I mean, Indiana's been playing some good football this year. There's a lot of debate to be had about strength of schedule, and that so many SEC teams are in the ranked in the top 12, despite the different strength of schedule to other teams outside of the SEC.
Yeah, and it's like you said. I mean, it's funny to see, or I wouldn't say funny, but it's interesting to see, teams like Indiana, SMU, like in the top 15, teams that you're not usually seeing that high ranking.
Yeah, not used to seeing, but playing some incredible football. Like, let's talk about Boise State, and they have a running back there, Ashton Johnson, who has the potential, I think, to win the Heisman Trophy this year.
He's my pick to win the Heisman. He's been amazing. I think he has combined over 2,000 yards scrimmage,
Hmm
19, if I'm not mistaken. I think his yards after contact is like 1,300.
And a bad day for him is just one touchdown, 100 yards, which is a great day for most other running backs.
Any day can go over the century mark. You're having a solid day in the backfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Travis Hunter, don't get me wrong, he's played some good football this year at both offensive and defensive ends of the ball, but you just can't deny what Ashton Johnson has done in that backfield.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I
Uh,
think Genty is for sure. If he doesn't win it and Hunter wins it, I would be kind of upset, but Hunter kind of deserves it too.
Yeah, I mean, I would understand why they would give it to Hunter,
Correct.
but I think Johnson would ultimately come out on top there. Final rankings for the college football playoff come out December 8th. And after our final show, we got the biggest game in the state of Texas, I think, A&M and UT, and they haven't played each other in a long time. And the ticket pool, or the queue to get tickets for this game, was absolutely insane. You saw the images on social media, people camping outside of Kyle Field.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Very fun game to watch. Both teams that are competing to make the college football playoff. UT is currently 91, ranking third, and A&M is 15th, 8-2. And A&M's turned a few heads. They weren't expected to be this competitive, so shout out to them.
Yeah, they've new coach, new program, and their offenses look great this year. So is the defense. They played some good football this year, and so is Texas. That's why they're ranked. They're ranked in the top
Third.
five. They're ranked
Yeah.
third. Uh, Despite some close games and a tough loss, I mean, they've still played incredible football this year. So it's gonna be a game where Texas would probably come out on top, probably by a touchdown or by a field goal. It's going to be a close game.
You never know, but I'll say this: Texas is my pick to win it all. It's been 19 years, 20 years since they last won CF.
2005.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, that'll be a great game. When we come back, we'll talk some hoops. We'll talk about the NBA and some action going on over there. Don't touch that dial. We'll be back after these messages. All In with Ali with a special guest, Daniel Garcia. And let's talk some NBA, starting with two teams that got off to hot starts in both conferences, starting with the West. Golden State off to a storming start of the season.
Yeah, and people weren't expecting them to be this, this hot, But with the addition of Buddy Hield being a complimentary, two guard catch and shoot guy, great 3-point shooter, and Draymond Green still being Draymond Green, getting technicals,
Getting techs and getting suspended almost every other week.
yeah, and I mean Steph Curry's still killing it at the age of 36.
And you see that dagger he hit in the NBA Cup earlier this week. I mean, That was just I mentioned this in last week's show, just vintage Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's a sight to see. It's always refreshing to see, an athlete of his caliber still doing, his traditional playmaking
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah, and all this without Klay Thompson too, who went over to the Mavs this year.
Yeah, it's the breakup that nobody wanted to happen, but I mean, all the best to both parties, and hopefully they can both either find a way to win a chip for their teams.
If we end up seeing both the Mavs and the Warriors face each other in the West playoffs this year, that would be an interesting matchup to watch for sure. Like that's prime time. That's must see TV right there.
Who do you think wins that if that happens? I got Dallas.
Yeah, in 7 though, because it's gonna come down to the wire.
For sure, for sure.
All right, and the Cavs finally lose their first game of the season in the NBA Cup against the Boston Celtics. And I mean, the Cavs got off to a great start this year. I mean, you could not have asked for a better start to an NBA season than what Cleveland put together.
Yeah, good for them. With their new head coach in Atkinson, that team is just filled with a bunch of solid guys, a bunch of rotational guys, and a few stars. Mobley, Spider Mitchell. Garland.
Mitchell's always such a fun watch.
Great athlete, great, can shoot, can drive, good defender. It's good for them. Unfortunately they did lose to Boston for the first loss of the year, but Boston's just a good team overall too.
Yeah. And that clip where you saw Jason Tatum pushing off a defender, there might have been a couple extra steps taken there, but
There was.
yeah, no, there definitely was. That definitely was a travel.
Yeah, 100%, totally was.
All right, and Spurs pulling off a win this week in the NBA Cup without Victor Wembanyama, and I mean, Keldon Johnson just stepped up, took over. It was this bit of a legacy game for him. Chris Paul, huge 3 for the Spurs, and they look like a much different team than they were last year.
Yeah, Kendall Johnson hasn't had that. I guess we're expecting a lot more of him, and this year he's been, turning that dial up, especially in this past game. With that drive to the bucket to poster. Who would he poster?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander absolutely postered him after making a man miss on his way to the bucket.
It's incredible finish, and CP3 is doing CP3 things. People like to kick a horse while he's down, but honestly, I think he's the point guard.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And who knows if Chris Paul stays here, he might get a chance to win that ring he's been looking for his entire career.
Definitely deserves one. Definitely.
The Spurs looking like a much better team, and I think they're going to be a team to watch over the next 2-3 years to see how they develop. I mean, Wembanyama has been incredible. He's been out for the last couple of games, but when he's played, he was incredible. I mean, that 50-point performance, I talked about it last week, just absolutely incredible. I mean, he can defend. He's such an elite defender. It's hard to guard someone who's 7'4" in the paint. And now, on top of that, they got him shooting the basketball from behind the line.
That's just great development by him. He's a generational athlete. He's going to be the face if he's not already the face, And he's one of Coach Pop's last students, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Popovich. Hopefully he's okay.
Yeah, hopefully so. And it was sad to see that he went out for a couple of games. So to hope that Coach Pop's recovering well, and that we can see him back now.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to see him back on the court,
because he's coached some incredible players over the years. I mean, that entire Spurs core, the Admiral, Tim Duncan, big fundamental,
Manu,
Parker. The list goes on. Kawhi as well.
Raptor legend.
Really got to go there?
Yes, I do.
All right. Pelicans this week dealing with a whole host of injuries this year, and that starting lineup that we saw in yesterday's game. I mean that seeing that lineup and that lineup being a way that I find out that Elfrid Payton is still in the league.
That brought the 14, 15-year-old kid in me to smile, because I was a huge Elfrid Payton fan, especially when he was drafted by the Magic. His hairdo, his finish, pass first type of guy. And then to see that he had been playing overseas and then playing in the G League, to finally be back in the NBA is pretty cool.
Yeah, but it's tough right now being a Pelicans fan, seeing a whole host of injuries, and not since last night. Elfrid Payton hadn't played a single minute of NBA basketball in 930 days prior to last night's game.
That's a crazy, crazy find. And it's sad to see. I mean, Zion's out,
That is their face of their franchise right now.
DeJounte Murray, another a student of Pop's, with a broken hand. McCollum is out. Herb Jones, a defensive guru. It's tough to have most of your starting players, if not all, being out with injuries. So what can you do?
Yeah, sometimes there really is nothing you can do. And then the Sixers, oh my God.
2-12.
2-12. I did not expect the Sixers to start off as poorly as they have this year. Like starting the year with the whole drama with Joel Embiid and him possibly facing suspension for the team not being upfront about how they're using him. That's one tough way to start off the season for starters. 1, 2, Embiid doesn't play most regular season games because he's always on management or something,
Yeah, there's just so much tension and drama there in Philadelphia. It's you hate to see it, especially they got a good coach in Nick Nurse. They got vets. They got Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Paul George, who I would never thought in a million years he'd be a Sixer.
Me neither. Jared McCain this year.
Yeah, Jared McCain's been the highlight, the bright spot, averaging about, I want to say, close to 20 points a game.
And then Embiid getting called out in a players-only meeting for always being late to practice and late to team meetings. I mean, that's not what you want to see from your franchise player.
No, he's just going through it, and hopefully he figures it out. Hopefully he's not taking it out on everybody. I know he did get in a feud with a reporter recently, so he
did face a suspension for that as well.
He needs to just get his head out of the clouds and just find something to bounce back.
Yeah, get back to playing the good basketball that we're used to seeing from Joel Embiid. All right, that's about it for talking hoops. Let's talk about you see the fight this week?
Yes, I did.
Most boring fight I've ever seen. I mean, it looked like Tyson was there just taking punches for the money.
Oh yeah, I mean, that guy was not even fighting back. I mean, he
had him for the first 2 rounds. It looked like Tyson was gonna take it to him.
Look, the way I think it broke down was he was either tired and fumed, and he's like, "Yeah, let me just take the punches," or it was scripted the whole way, and he wanted money.
He was also going in on a knee brace too. He had injured his knee training for this fight, and he had dealt with a whole host of health issues leading up to it as well. I mean, who'd have thought that a fight between an influencer and a 58-year-old man was going to turn out as terribly as it did?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. And see, I didn't even know he had all those health concerns. That's a shame. Hopefully he's doing better. But I mean, it's Mike Tyson. You really think he's worried about the fight? I really don't think so.
And I think the other fights on the card were pretty good. The Serrano-Taylor fight, I couldn't catch most of it because Netflix was just
buffering.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if Netflix is going to keep on hosting fights. They're going to host NFL games on Christmas Day too. So
no, that's a disaster. That's already ruined my day.
Yeah. But I was rewatching the other fights on the card, and I thought Serrano got absolutely robbed by Taylor. I mean, Taylor was headbutting almost the entire fight. There were some dirty punches thrown there, and that Taylor, that she only got 1 point taken off her scorecard for that. That was massive oversight by the judges, and the crowd was understandably not happy with Taylor being given the win.
Yeah, and it was definitely a fight that turned a couple heads. A very, I guess you would say, mismatch, or just not even like an even playing field. No one really had the right idea on what was going on. It was very just one-sided, if you'd say.
All right, and we'll take a break here on All In with Ali. When we come back, we'll talk about some new developments in the off season in baseball. Some awards were handed out too, and as well as on this day in sports history. We'll be back after this message. Welcome back to All In with Ali. Let's talk about some developments in the off season first off with the Juan Soto sweepstakes, everyone wants in on him. Dodgers, Mets, and the Red Sox and the Blue Jays as well met with him, and from what I've heard, Juan Soto, any indication said he was impressed by the presentations he got from the Red Sox and from the Jays.
Yeah, and as a Mets fan, I would love him in Queens, but anyone can get him from those that trio of powerhouse teams. And
Hmm.
I was thinking about it the other day. If he goes to Boston, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All those bombs in that home run friendly park.
Oh, he's gonna love hitting at Fenway Park. That pesky pole out in right field. So many home runs that David Ortiz hit there over the years when he was playing in Boston, and with the monster too out and left. And we know Soto's got that opposite field pop too.
Yeah, I'll bow tacos all day, baby. But one thing to note is that he says, and he's stated that he loves playing in Queens, and he's done like I want to say his batting average and his slugging percentage is like a career high every time he plays in Queens. So it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and also he wouldn't have to torch you guys every time you see Juan Soto in the opposing lineup.
Hey man, he's been a Met killer like Freddie Freeman.
Oh no, tell me about it. What he did to my Astros in 2019. That ball he hit off of Verlander still hasn't landed.
I think I think that 2019 Nationals roster is probably one of my favorite World Series teams ever, and that's because they're I wouldn't say they're a rival, but in the same division.
Hmm.
But that Nationals team deserved that ring. That was such an underdog tale
Hmm.
that fed families.
Yeah, and then the Astros were a powerhouse that year that fell short, and I think AJ Hinch just pulling the plug on Zach Greinke was what ultimately did him in.
Zach deserves a ring.
Yeah. He deserved a ring, and it's a shame we couldn't get him while we was here. We went to 2 World Series with him, but we ultimately didn't come out on top in either of them.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But yeah, next up, Chicago Cubs picking up some bullpen depth. They traded for Eli Morgan from the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, Eli Morgan has been with the Guards for a handful of years now, and he's like a sinker baller, off-speed guy, good location pitcher, and he's had a sub-2 ERA this past I want to say like the past 2 years or last
Yeah,
year.
like last year he had a sub 2, I think. And also the Cubs love their location and off-speed pitching guys. I mean, Kyle Hendricks was that guy for so many years over in Chicago.
And now he's with the Angels,
Now he's an Angel.
just like Travis d'Arnaud.
Travis d'Arnaud. Maybe, like I said the other week, could it be a sign that the Angels want Max Fried? Because Travis d'Arnaud was Fried's catcher in Atlanta for so many years. But I don't know. I doubt the Angels would get him, though.
Yeah, it's tough. Artie Moreno with the Angels just loves to sign, veterans just for ticket sales, but it's
Just to sell tickets and say, oh, we spent money on the team. We're good, guys. Come and watch us.
yeah,
And then the team just ends up finishing like with 75, 80 wins.
not even 80. It's tough. It's
Been bad like the last few years. Mike Trout's like going through injuries. He's reaching the tail end of his career.
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Especially as someone who grew up watching
Yeah.
Mike Trout. I mean, his that 2011 was just incredible.
Mid 2010s to latter half 2010s, Mike Trout was inspirational. Was the face of the league.
And the fact that he only played in 1 playoff series his entire career is a shame.
It's a shame he's got to go somewhere else. You got to shout out his loyalty, but at what cost? At what
Yeah.
cost, Mike?
And then Jose Siri going from Tampa Bay over to New York. He was traded to the Mets earlier. Astros legend Jose Siri out to shore up the outfield defense for New York.
That was a good move because, yeah, his whiff rates, his strikeout rates, pretty high. And it's like in the 1 percentile, to be honest. But his glove, his speed, his pop is the upside that can be developed. And, it's a good move because he's under contract to 2027 and he's getting paid like $3 million per year.
Somewhere between 2 and 5, I'd say.
And that's a steal. I mean, we got New York native Harrison Bader, who had a great season for us, as our 4th outfielder, or as our starting center fielder, and, would rotate with Tyrone Taylor. And he's got a great glove, but his bat just wasn't the same from like his Cardinal days.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a good replacement, and we'll see how it pans out.
Could it be that the Mets are trying to shore up their defense in preparation for a potential acquisition of Soto?
Hey, that's a good move, too. I mean, if Siri plays center, Brandon Nimmo at left, and I'll interchange Taylor and Soto at right, and maybe Soto just primarily plays DH.
DH.
That'd be huge, but
Yeah, and then the days that Soto has to play right field, Siri could take up everything in the gaps with the incredible range he's got.
Yeah,
on
what a great.
defense.
And he's got a solid arm too.
Yeah.
Flamethrower from the center field position.
And then they can just have Juan Soto hug the line and take the easy fly balls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Another story that we're keeping an eye on: the Tropicana Field will not be ready till 2026. The Rays will be playing at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, and the city of St. Petersburg, they're pulling back on the new stadium deal because of that.
And it's been a problem for years. There was rumors back in before, I think it was like a couple years ago, that let's move Tampa Bay back to Montreal, or move to bring back the Expos, because the city of Florida didn't want to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Tampa Bay plays in not in Tampa. They play in
St. Pete.
St. Petersburg, so it's nowhere near. It's like the traffic is horrible.
It's like an hour and a half away from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and that's why they don't get a lot of fan turnout, and that's a lot of revenue for like a Moneyball situation franchise there.
In spite of that, they still have really good TV ratings. There is a viewership. People want to watch
Yes.
baseball there. They just can't because it's so far away. There's almost no public transportation to get there. The traffic to get there by car, it's bad. There's only like 2 or 3 bridges from Tampa that take you there.
Yeah, it's just a recipe for disaster, and maybe them playing in that park, Steinbrenner Park or field, it'll bring out a better turnout, and either they rebuild Tropicana or they relocate them somewhere a closer proximity.
It'll just be a weird sight seeing an AL East team playing in a stadium that's plastered in Yankees logos.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have to cover that up. I don't know if they can, but it's gonna be really weird to see.
Yeah, even though Steinbrenner's name is on the outside of the stadium.
Yeah.
All right, some awards in MLB this week. In the American League, Tarek Skubal winning the Cy Young, Stephen Vogt winning Manager of the Year, and Luis Gil winning Rookie of the Year. I mean, Skubal just had an incredible year. It was just nasty. I think he winning the Triple Crown absolutely helped him, but he was the best pitcher in baseball, I think, this year.
Yeah, no doubt, and he's a big reason why that Detroit Tigers team propelled the second half turnaround and made a run to the ALDS. They defeated Houston, and it was not what a lot of people expected, but it happened, and it's just a scrappy group of young core and some vets here and there with a great manager in AJ Hinch, former show legend. Just what a year for that team and for Skubal, very much deserved.
Yeah, he's going to be a centerpiece for that rotation for many years to come. Meanwhile, in the National League, Chris Sale winning the Cy Young Award, Pat Murphy winning Manager of the Year, and Paul Scanes winning Rookie of the Year. I mean, Sale and Paul Scanes looked like they were going to go toe-to-toe for the Cy Young, but I mean, it's hard for rookies to win the Cy Young Award, 1, and 2, Chris Sale's comeback this year was just incredible.
Yeah, it's almost unheard of for a rookie to win a Cy Young, but Paul Skeens, man, what a generational talent there too. Good for him, good for the Pirates who deserve some franchise cornerstones. And as for Sale, what a year, what a great move by the management of the Atlanta Braves, and then all East rival, who like, hey, took a chance on Chris Sale and signed him, and 35, 36-year-old with a Cy Young Award is another thing that's unheard of. Good for him.
No, it hasn't happened. I think Verlander won it in 2022 at a young age. I mean, I think that had to be the best season of Verlander's career. Even if he was pretty old, he still had a sub-2 ERA on the year.
Insane.
In 2022. Won his first World Series game, got a ring. You can't ask for a better season than that. But Chris Sale, I mean, the way that he was pitching, I mean, it almost like he found the fountain of youth back to his days at the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, before he tore his uniform and then got traded to Boston and won a chip there in 18.
Yeah. That was a good move by Boston to pick him up. They don't win the World Series that year without him.
No, they don't. But that that Boston team, who do they have? Evaldi,
Evaldi.
Was Kimbrel there?
Kimbrel was there.
Eduardo Rodriguez was there too.
E-Rod. And that offense was stacked too. I mean, Rafi Devers, Mookie Betts.
I think Mitch Moreland was there.
Mitch Moreland was there too.
Yeah, that team was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Andrew Benintendi.
Don't get me started on that catch. I mean, if Alex Bregman hits it like 2 feet in any other direction, we win that game.
Yeah, but what can you do?
Yeah. And then the next game, Altuve got absolutely hosed by the umps on a fan interference call.
Yeah, that was brutal to see.
Yeah. But enough about that. And then Manager of the Year, Pat Murphy of the Brewers winning that one over Carlos Mendoza of the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, both rookie managers for the respective teams, and I understand why Pat would win it, but I guess not a lot of people expected Milwaukee to win the division and take it from that division's hands. But I mean, Mendoza in his rookie year took this team farther, and he beat Pat Murphy in the wild card, and the Mets made a run to they were 2 games away from a World Series. So what can you do?
All right. On this day in sports history, back in 1972, Carlton Fisk wins the American League Rookie of the Year, known for the famous home run he hit and trying to wave that fair in the World Series. Mets ultimately won that series, though. 2004, Kurt Busch wins at the 56th NASCAR Cup, and in 2021, Lewis Hamilton wins the first ever Qatar Grand Prix. Program notes on Vaquero Radio to talk about office hours tomorrow at 10 a.m., and on Monday, we got a whole host of programs here on Vaquero Radio, starting with the newscast at 11, Vaquero Insider with Skylar Howell at 12:30, The Lounge with DJ Junction at 2 p.m., and live coverage of the men's basketball game versus Lemoyne College at 6:15. And you're going to be on the TV for that, is that correct?
I'm going to do color for that game, yes.
All right, and I guess I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
It was great. It was great having you, man. It was really great conversations we had here on the show, and that ultimately wraps up All In with Ali for the semester. Thank you everyone who tuned in throughout the semester. We'll be back next semester though, so stay around, stay tuned for the updates of the programming there. But thank you all so much for tuning in, and final note, good luck to the UTRGV volleyball team who play at the Southland Conference Tournament this weekend. And thank you all so much for tuning in this week. Have a great one, UTRGV. Y'all stay classy.